All right. What an intro. Hey, everybody. It's Nate Spees and Greg Gibson. And this is the Adventurous CMO podcast live show. And we are super thrilled to be here today with Casey Bevington from UAG, a longtime collaborator, friend, and someone that I've always been inspired by the work that he's doing. Casey is the Chief Brand Officer at UAG. And I'm really excited about today's conversation, talking through brand storytelling, talking about building in-house teams, and talking about really what fuels creativity and what that looks like in a world that is constantly changing. So excited for today's conversation. And with that, Casey, kicking things off, I I have always been inspired by your approach to storytelling. I think that's something that I've seen from you over the years. It's just been a commitment to telling stories that, frankly, often exist far beyond the brand of UAG and what you sell from a product standpoint. I'd love to hear a little bit more about your philosophy and ethos and kind of how you have crafted that and honed that as kind of a point of view through the years.
Sure. Yeah. First, thanks for having me. This is great. I'm stoked to connect. It's been good getting to know you guys over the years, and yeah, it's fun to connect on a platform like this. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's kind of been, I've been doing this for quite a while at this point. I come from the action sports world where, it's rich with story and authenticity and being scrappy. And so that's just how I was shown to do it. That's how I was thrown to it. That's how the budgets dictated it for it. Throughout my career, it's been, I've been doing this for about 25 years, so it's had different shapes and different views, but at some point in the, around 2008-ish, cameras became very reasonably priced and you could shoot high quality content, and like a light bulb went off for me that like deep storytelling is actually attainable by small brands, um, and being able to execute by small teams. Um, and for me, what it did is it just kind of showed that, like, hey, we could have ideas in the morning and be shooting those ideas by the afternoon and just keep moving and moving and moving. So being nimble and efficient is always kind
Mhm.
of my uh, table stakes, if so to speak. Like, how can we do this as easy as possible? And there's tons of cheat codes and ways that I've found to do that. And so that's kind of, I mean, that's the crux of it. Like, is just tell very genuine, authentic stories that all tie back to the brand's DNA. Whether those are directly tied to product or not is, in my mind, somewhat irrelevant. The storytelling is just an extension of who we are as a brand and helps spread our ethos and our point of view, wide, and into new audiences. And so I think I just don't know any other way to do it than to do it rooted in storytelling.
Love that. It seems like, you and your team at UAG have developed a shorthand. But it sounds like that's kind of built on the brand's DNA. When you arrived, how did you build the DNA? How do you make sure that everybody was kind of swimming at the same stream and pointing in the right
Sure.
direction so that like you can move fast?
Sure. Yeah. So when I came here, I've been here for right around 8 years. They'd done a great job of creating half of the brand, meaning they created sort of the product manifestation of the brand. They had a very clear point of view. The product was has a very distinct industrial design. They
Mhm.
had a very clear vision of who their customer was because the founders built it. They built a brand around a white space that they saw for themselves. So they had a very clear picture of who their customer was. And they were portraying a lifestyle. They were doing their best with what they had. They didn't have brand people in house. They were all product guys. They had a really great, small team that were scrappy in doing it. But what they were doing was portraying a lifestyle. So, it looked, they were using some stock photography, some stock imagery, and they were rooting it in the visuals of an outdoor rugged lifestyle. So when I came in here, they were looking for a creative director. I pitched them on the idea of like, hey, I think you need more than creative director. I think we can flesh out a real brand that's rooted in what you guys are doing, but also lays in a level of authenticity to it. And so once they were on board with that, like this has been the best experience in my career. They've fully trusted the vision of what we were doing. And so what I did to your question, Greg, is I just convinced them of the things we needed, right? So they were buying stock photography. They were, dealing with what they had. And, the first thing I had to convince them on is we need to be able to make this. So I need to be able to hire a person, an art director that I worked with in the past that I trusted and I knew could execute on things. And we needed the equipment to create, it's like, it's surprising to convince, a founder like, hey, we need to buy, $15,000 worth of camera equipment. That's, and they don't understand. And then you show that payoff really quickly when you're able to create these things. And so having having at least a very, very base version of internal capabilities was like step one for us. And from that, it's really just been scaling that, through time and adding more capabilities and working with the same contractors over and over as what we call as our extended, internal team, is this sort of army of contractors that are one step removed from us that we've all worked with in the past. So it's like, that's the shorthand. The shorthand, I said again, is like, we can have an idea, a very, a great creative conversation in a boardroom and, over here, and then quickly move and understand how we're going to execute that without having to go through some of the red tape and logistical things that get in the way of creativity usually.
Yeah, it sounds to me like there's a pretty big, and we've talked about it before, but a pretty big speed component to being able to move rapidly, kind of rapidly prototype storytelling and all of those pieces. Can you give us an example of kind of maybe a real-time example of how that's worked for you? Like where
Sure.
you've gone, oh, this thing, we think that this could be a thing. Here's how I brought it to the team, and here's what we did to make it into something.
Yeah, I mean, the one that I point to most frequently was we have a handful of big customers, that are, big retailers that we're pitching on a very regular basis, to get our phone cases and our products into their doors. And oftentimes there's some very like blue sky thinking in those pitches. And, I had wanted to test streaming TV, doing commercials on streaming platforms and streaming TV, connected TV. And so we pitched it, blue sky in the room, like, hey, we could do this for you guys. It's you'll be around iPhone launch. We're happy to do it. No fucking idea, like no clue if we could pull it off. And we could do it, pitch the idea in the room. Hey, we got this idea. It's a cyclist. He drops the phone. It's slow-mos, like beautiful, available at, your store, customers. Right. And quickly, like both people we pitched it to are like, we love it. Let's do it. And we're like, no problem. And they said, problem is that we need it in 3 weeks. And so for us, it was like, and again, in the room, no problem. Like, we got this. And then, grab my team really quickly and go, guys, we need to flesh out an idea. We need talent. We need location. We need to shoot it. It needs to be edited and, and delivered, within, 2 weeks is basically what we had. And we did it, I think we did it. I think end to end, it was 9 days, booked the talent, had the location, shot it, edited it, colored it, the whole deal. And the only reason we were able to execute that is, again, talked about authenticity earlier. It's like, because we are connected with the athletes and have this great network of people that we work with on a very regular basis. And the same thing with the DPs and cinematography and editors and all this thing. It was really easy for us to be like, okay, we've got this guy, we've got Alonzo, we can shoot Alonzo. We know we want to shoot him up in LA. We've got these 2 options for people to shoot it, to film it, who totally understand cycling. So there was no learning curve. It was, so again, really easy to build a team. Everyone already knew each other, no drama, and then to execute something that quick. And so when, being nimble allows you to do something like that, where I've been other places, bigger companies, where it's been like, to shoot something like that would have been a 4-month, 5-month back and forth, 150 meetings, to agree on everything. And this was something that we were just able to go out, shoot, and the piece was beautiful. Like it was awesome.
Yeah, I love that piece. And I love that you started with the business case. You're like, hey, we have this opportunity,
right?
And I know what the right story is for this opportunity. Like, let's go. I think a lot of times being able to not just like be obsessed with your idea, like, I have this great idea. What if we did this? You're like pairing it with the business opportunity. And I think that's probably where that comes to life. I know we've seen similar scenarios where like, we talked about an idea for maybe 5 months with a client and then finally get approval. And we're like, oh, in 3 weeks, we're in Croatia. And then in 3 more weeks, the campaign's in market.
It's done.
And I think, a lot of times it's just making sure that you have the right people in the room, that you're telling the right story, and that you're connecting it back to how it's going to work for the brand.
Sure.
How do you, I know I've seen a ton of activity from you kind of engaging with Preston from Chubby's content on LinkedIn. Like, how do you connect your POV of quick, nimble, telling brand stories all the time with like that kind of, measured brand impact, that balancing performance and brand awareness work?
Sure. Yeah. So, I love Preston and his point of view on stuff. I like that somebody's, in a very clever way, showing the value of brand and trying to explain the value in brand in the way that some, CFOs and CEOs might understand a little cleaner. I'll be honest, I don't think too much about the metrics at all. I have, and that is probably a shortcoming of mine. I will hear it and I will listen to it when people bring it to me, but I definitely work from instinct. I'm blessed and very grateful to have a board that for where I'm at now that understands the value of brand.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in a market where we're a brand amongst commodities. So
yeah,
our customers that are really moving the needle for us from a revenue standpoint, meaning our big retail buys that we get into the wholesale channels, look at us as a value add into their own businesses. So, some of these wireless dealers, we bring brand into their store. So there's some of those things that are very hard to quantify, but I know, like that spot that we did, the cycling spot that we did, I know for a fact that brought in a tremendous amount of revenue on both ends, sell in and sell through when it came to business. So my sort of look to success from a business standpoint tends to be a bit more anecdotal than actually data driven. But so far, seems to be working. And I've got plenty of people in the business who are looking at numbers all day.
Yeah.
So I keep my head in the clouds.
I think there's something to be said about instinct though. And I think that there's something to be said about being ruthless about like the prioritization of brand storytelling and the belief in it. I think the thing that's interesting to me and like, something I maybe you could expound on is, that's a foundation built on trust. Like all of what you just communicated is that you've got an internal environment where the board trusts the outcomes, your executive team trusts the outcomes. There's mutual trust on the creative team around the development of ideas. I'm just curious, like if you could expand on like, has that been something that you facilitated in from a leadership standpoint and just like nurturing? If so, how? And how can others also really bring that level of development of that type of culture to their organizations?
Sure. Yeah. And I can go all the way back to, internally here. I think the first big win we have, which I would say has really set the stage for the trust that you talked about, was we had a big idea. It was like 2017, 2016, somewhere in there. We were just having one of those creative sessions and it was like, hey, we just launched our tagline, Built to Go Further. And we were just like having this conversation of like, what is further? Like let's do something big, guys. Like team was kind of throwing out small ideas. I'm like, no, bigger, like what is further? And we're like, at the time, it was, and it means still relevant now, but at the time it was in the height of like content creators, meaning like actual photographer, videographer, content creators on Instagram, having huge followings, and and driving a lot of engagement and stuff. So we just came up with this idea, like, further, let's New Zealand, that's physically far from where we're at in California.
Right.
And what can we do? Like, well, let's take 6 of these like very relevant to my brand content creators down to New Zealand, and let's let them document their time there. We'll set up the infrastructure. We'll get them there. We will set up all the events to do. We'll take them to all the right places. All they need to do is, through their lens, their unique POV, document it. And then we will document that process. We will tell one big, sort of short film, 10-minute piece about the whole thing. We'll do individual, 60-second, 90-second pieces on each individual person as a profile. And then obviously they'll have their own POV. So this big sort of spider web of content. Big idea, right? No idea if we could do it. We had 4 people that worked internally. We're like, I don't know. And so, built a deck. First had to convince, the CEO, the founder at the time, that this was a good investment, that type of brand storytelling actually makes any difference. So that was the first hurdle, like convincing him. And again, like just the stars aligned. He was great, like grateful that he was willing to take that chance, and then just executed on it, got, Air New Zealand involved, got the, tourism board of New Zealand involved, and just like executed this very big idea with a very small team, tiny team, and went and executed it and came back. And it's probably the best thing I've ever been involved in, that I've done in my career. It was just so big and so, aspirational and as well as like very, I don't know, almost unattainable to think that we could execute it. And we've executed almost every single piece that we had in this very big plan. And then that resonated. That got all of our big customers were psyched about it. The content resonated. The views were there. Like all of it happened. It made a difference. And so what that did for us is it just laid this idea of like, hey, we thought big. We were maybe naively confident that we could pull it off, and just went out and did it, went out and did it, and then delivered this thing that was Discovery Channel level, content with this team who some of which were just like figuring out how to do this. Some people, that was the first trip they'd ever had out of the United States. So like there's that component too. So doing that, like laid down this foundation of like, okay, we can trust these guys. We can trust them to execute it. We can trust them with the budget. We can trust them that like, hey, they are onto something. They understand that storytelling is going to do something. And that set this level of trust with internal management, with the board, with our big customers, and with my team, with the team at the time. The team is, ebbed and flowed and changed. But at the time it set the tone with the team that like, guys, we can do this, like we can do big things. And so it kind of removed some stress. And what it did is it just popped the top for like ideas, and the ability to do it. And so that's really what did it. And so like, my advice to anyone trying to like do this and establish this level of trust is just set like really big intentions and like challenge yourself, and then go execute on it, and then like let the sort of the work and be the proof that like, hey, you can trust us, we got this.
Yeah, I love that. And we had a comment in the chat about that really being the ticket to success. I love seeing those comments. And I think Nate and I were talking a couple of weeks ago about how if there's one constant across every single client that's gone big or believed in something, it's that kind of top-down leadership. And there's going to be someone that takes a chance. So I love that you said the CEO they were willing to take that chance. And I think that then has this kind of flywheel of trust that kicks off.
It's cool.
What about?
Sorry to interrupt. It's cool.
Yeah,
I just to piggyback on it real quick. It's cool too because it's something that I've repeated, and you almost always get the same response as when you pitch the really big idea, and especially when it's a really good, like a really good idea. When you pitch the big idea, you can see people start to freak out in the room because they're like, "Fuck, this is such a good idea. Like, how could we not do this?" And at the same time, like, how the hell are we going to do this?
Yeah, how are you gonna pull it off?
And it's the coolest moment. It's the coolest moment because you can see people's buy-in almost immediately. Like you can see it sink into their heads. They're like, "Oh my god, we're going to do this. This is exciting." And so it creates this it creates this this moment of like where it's like the beginning of something really special.
Yep.
Yeah, you get the goosebumps, and everybody's nervous but excited. I think I always say trust is the currency of creativity. You gotta have it, and the more you have of it, the bigger the creative idea can get. How do you establish that with your team? Like from a creative leadership standpoint, how do you build a team that's all about creativity? And you said you started with one big idea, but from a day-to-day standpoint, I know a lot of our clients are working with in-house teams. They're working on trying to build more more creativity into the process, because it's easy for in-house teams to be like the order takers and the ticket takers, like especially for global brands. You've got so and so all around the world saying, I need my logo adjusted or whatever, but that's not the superpower of in-house teams.
Yeah.
So how do you make that?
Yeah. So I mean, first, it's building a team that I as a leader can trust, right? So like I'm very, very thorough with, and particular about who gets added to the team and who's in these key positions, right? And it's more of a, this is another instance where it's more instinctual and using my gut more than looking at a resume. I mean, I always say it's like I would rather have the right person in the seat that's just gets it, that's like gonna be passionate about what we're doing, than the person who knows knows the most about the programs, or knows how is the most like technically, or has the most schooling. Because you can learn we can learn what we need to learn here, right? And it's like we're not doing super complex things here, so it's all about having the right people in the right seats, and getting buy-in on that level. I am definitely someone who comes in with big ideas, but then trusts the team to execute. So I'm not micromanaging anyone on a creative level. I like to pop in and give my opinion, but I let everybody know, hey, if I say something, it's just my opinion. These are no means marching orders. Please don't make, unless you believe in what I'm saying, don't make changes. But I think the most important thing, and my, biggest responsibility when it comes to the creative team, is protecting them. To your point, internal teams can very easily become order takers. It's too easy to get an email from, someone in sales or some part of the business asking for something and saying how important it is, and trying to derail your internal team from stuff. So my biggest job is just protecting them and being a guardian or a gatekeeper for them, so that they have a buffer and they can be creative and they have time to do their thing. And we can prioritize the right things. So oftentimes I'm the one having the harder conversations with other parts of the business, explaining why their projects aren't going to get done, or why we have a hard and fast rule that there's nothing gets done if it's got a due date sooner than 2 weeks. It's like, you can't give us something and tell us you need it by the end of the week. So I just have some rules in place, and I protect, and I'm pretty, I stick to them. I set boundaries for my department, and we stick to them for the most part. And I think as a result, they have a deep amount of trust in me as a leader, and a deep sort of camaraderie amongst themselves within the team. So what I've found is some of those things, that they would have complained about having to do, or having too much work to do, they will happily do them because they feel protected.
Mm-hmm. That's well said. That's well said. Yeah, I think going back to what you were saying before, I think you're absolutely right, and it's probably also the flywheel effect of that environment creates momentum that then the gears of, hey, I'm going to continue to push you to be kind of boundless in your creative thinking and how you're thinking about solving problems. I'm sure that there's natural momentum that's developed by way of creating an environment where people feel safe, they feel like they can do their best work, and simultaneously feel like they also want to probably contribute above and beyond because you've created an
Absolutely.
environment where they can do that.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, and it's again, it's like it is it creates an environment and a team where it's like we really have a team, and I've been a lot of places where people put their headphones on and they get their job done and they do the work and they do their piece, but like we definitely have a team, that gels and that gets rooted in the bigger ideas and not so much just they're part of the idea. So it's really cool. It's a dynamic work environment, and again, we're able to do things with a pretty small team because of it, because you kind of got everyone's
Mhm.
buy-in.
Love that.
Love that. It's been so cool to see kind of the evolution also, like from New Zealand to, the cycling piece, a lot of the other content that you guys have created. I'd love to hear, it seems like the formula is working and then you kind of have it down. What are some of the new things that you're thinking about? Like what's on your mind? Like what problems are you trying to solve? How are you thinking about going bigger?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, honestly, right now we're in a mode of trying to go back to what I think our real secret sauce
Mm.
superpower is, which is storytelling, rooted in a particular person. So like we've had an ambassador team and an extended family with UAG since I got here. One of the first things we built was like, we started with content creators. We built a team of content creators who were part of the brand, and that's ebbed and flowed. And so, we built the brand on telling stories about these different ambassadors. And then over the last couple of years, it seems like we migrated towards some more product forward storytelling. So we challenged ourselves to say like, hey, how can we solve this problem where how do we tell stories around product that are on the same level as the stories we tell about people, you know? And so we did a
Hmm.
really good job with it. The team rose to the
Yeah.
challenge. They figured it out. The product stuff is beautiful. Um, you know, I hate to say it, but product stuff gets the best engagement when it comes to like social metrics and stuff. So so what do you do by
You're kind of a numbers
yeah,
guy.
a little
A
bit,
little bit more than
although I will
that.
say, this is where I let I give my team some autonomy. I let them execute. So they were doing it. I would almost on a
Good.
weekly basis be like, I don't really care about the metrics, guys. I want to tell stories about people. And so, and JT would push back and push back and push back. And we just ended in a place where we released a lot of great products, and so like we just got really product heavy, so we're pulling back into telling more stories. And so we just did a piece on Outdoors Alley, who she's a hunter and she fishes and just a very dynamic woman. She's a chef, she cooks, everything that she catches and kills. And it's just a great like embodiment of UAG's DNA. And so we went back to what we did. Like, let's tell a story about Allie. She's in Florida now. Let's figure out how to do that. What's the story? She's a dynamic person. How do we weave in product? And so like, which is a great challenge. We make phone cases and accessories, mobile accessories. So how to make that cool within a story without it looking
Right.
overtly like a product commercial is an awesome challenge. And so we did it, right. We did this one fully in-house for, whereas this is the first challenge where I have a dynamic, content guy that we brought in house that is rooted in video, does photos, also doing some social stuff. This is the first time where like, hey, this is a big production. Like, we're going to tell a big story. This is yours. This is like an empowerment piece, like, opportunity for him. And went out and shot this beautiful piece around Allie, who is super authentic. Like I said, reeks of UAG DNA, done fully in-house, fully in-house by the in-house team, all the way through to the end. And so it was cool to go back to this like time. Like I said, it's probably been 3 or 4 years since we've done this, where it was like, who's the person, what's the story, what are we going to tell as a brand? Because her fishing brand is going to want to tell a fishing story. The hunting brand is going to want to tell a hunting story. We live in this world where we can tell whatever story we want. And so going back to authenticity, often we'll just go to, like in this case, we went to Allie and like, what do you want to do? What story you want to tell? So they're a part of this creative, flow. And so getting back to that, telling the stories that we want to tell rather than solving new problems. The problem we're kind of doing is like, how can we get back to balance internally here as a brand? Because we figured out, early on, brand storytelling. Over the last handful of years, we figured out product storytelling. Now the biggest problem is like, let's find balance. Let's find balance where we're not too overly weighted in one particular area.
I think that's a huge point, and one that is super authentic to what you're experiencing. But I think also the challenge of almost every marketing creative organization, regardless of regardless of where they are, is how do you continually look at what the work that you're doing and you're contributing, and ensure that you're looking at it kind of holistically and not getting the pendulum, because often you're absolutely right. That's what happens, right? It's like the pendulum's over here, prioritize the other stuff, and then you're like, oh, how do we get out of this crazy swing of just going back and forth? And the reality is, like, as a brand, that's impacting your customers a little bit when they're going, wait, what's happening? So I love that you're experiencing that, and then also finding your true north that's connected to the DNA, connected to the organization and what your mission, and being able to still remain authentic to the brand in the process of that. I think that's something every organization faces, and it's complex because it's different for every business is going to have a different set of parameters and like bottom line related items, as well as probably creative vision around what that needs to look like for their group. And again, I think it's cool to hear you say that, because I do think that that's something that's kind of a constant challenge in most organizations.
Yeah, we also have which is not unique to us, we have the added complexity of we're a global business, right? Like we are a very balanced global business. So there's demands, on a weekly basis, like, where's our content for, insert country here, and so trying to balance that, right? And we've done a decent job, but again, small team, modest budgets, trying to make everyone happy. We have to, what I found is, rather than creating a 12-month calendar of like, here's what we want to do from a brand standpoint, like it's got to be a 2-year calendar of like making sure that 2-year window is balanced. Because we're just not big enough to do it any other way. It's just not possible. We still have big ideas. We wanted to shoot a cyclist in Thailand, so we sent our team to Thailand to shoot, Gift in Thailand, and it came out amazing. And it's very much a Thai, it is an international piece. You can tell she's in Thailand. So again, that it's ticking the global box. But even that, then I've got, the European region saying, well, what about Germany or Switzerland or, or the Middle East? Like we would love something here. And you get tugged in all these ways because we're good at what we're doing. It's a good problem to have, that everyone wants to make sure we're doing it in their region. So it's finding balance over that whole mix. And that's, I think that's probably one of my bigger jobs, is making sure we're staying balanced in all of these areas, while keeping, it rooted in the business, making sure that the things we do are building brand, they're building brand equity, they're building that multiple side of the, valuation equation. And so that's something where, I spend most of my time. I don't burden my team with that stuff, but that's, from my seat as the brand guy, I got to make sure I'm rooted in the business.
Totally.
For sure. I love what you just said there, because I feel like it, the idea about Thailand and, all of these other stories that you need to be able to tell, you can tell that it, like, the through line feels like your commitment to authenticity. Like what can we continue to do every time that's unique to who we are as a brand? And I think a lot of times brands can lose sight of that. Like they can say like, oh, we have to do X, Y, and Z this way because, so-and-so is telling us to do that. And I think when you show up authentically as a brand, consumers are going to resonate. Your audience is going to respect you and engage with the content a lot more. And that's long-term brand building at its best.
And frankly, it's the only way I know how to do it. It's Well,
Mhm.
and it's the only way that my gut will let me do it, So like Gift, for example, the Thailand piece, Gift is someone that I came across, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago. She was a specialized ambassador, and what she was doing was so cool. And so I followed it. And so I've been 4 years, I've been trying to figure out, how do we tell this story? This would be cool. And so we've worked it out, it happened. Thailand's a big market for us. She has her own, like her friends and over there are like a little production unit. So we did a hybrid where we worked with her team to like create this along. We plugged our team into their team, and it was like it was one of the most organic and authentically like developed pieces that I think we've done, where we've had to like really mix and make sure we were doing the Thai community justice. Gift, was shown in a great light and telling the story she wanted to tell, and then still being very much UAG, built to go further. And then the
Yep.
last piece is I always share this with teams, like we got to get some product in the piece, like we got
Right.
a little bit of something, right? And so this is we ended up shooting a watch strap that we didn't even make the color of anymore. So then they come home, and then my job is to make sure, like, well, shit, I guess we gotta relaunch that watch strap, because it was like the hero of the shoot. It was this orange watch strap, and it's like,
Mhm.
so that's kind of like a little insight into like sort of the dynamic nature. Like we're a decent sized business, but we're still like we're scrappy, and it's almost like we're a hybrid of a like startup and an established business. We live in this great sweet spot where we can be messy and but still have great impact.
Well, it seems like it's been it's led to a lot of creative bravery, and it's led to an opportunity in all of that to keep pushing boundaries, keep the main thing with the vision for what you want to accomplish for the brand, and it's super inspiring. I think it's inspiring because, again, I think um, for organizations that are much larger, and for organizations that are smaller, it can always feel like such a these types of conversations are really helpful because it can always feel like this black box where you're like, how do teams actually get this type of work done, and what does that look like? And oftentimes how the sausage is made is often a lot messier and a lot more complicated than one would be led on to believe. And what I love
Hmm.
about how you communicate this stuff is that you've prioritized building a creative team that believes in what you're doing, that is passionate about the outcomes, and the belief that they can do big things, and that comboed with trust within the organization, and vision of what can be, and the optimism for that has led to some pretty cool moments for y'all.
Definitely, yeah, it has been. And I think most of the people that have either work here or have worked here would say that that's one thing we've been able to do, is we've been able to do pretty much whatever we want, meaning like no ideas off the table. If we all agree it's the right idea, then we're going to make it. And there's no real bureaucracy or red tape that gets in the way of that, which is, for as long as I get to keep this job, that's one of the biggest things that I'm grateful for, is that like, hey, like we can keep having really big ideas and making them happen, which is really cool. And to get to bring like other friends and colleagues and people into the process. And I speak of like in-house, but like we'll plug agencies in, we'll plug contractors in, we plug people in, but it's always, this partnership. It's
Yeah,
never handing over my creative to anyone else. It's
yeah,
always a partnership. I mean, you guys know we've kicked some
yeah,
ideas around and stuff. It's always
totally.
a very collaborative, extended family for whatever period of time you're in an engagement. So it's really cool.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, maybe to just kind of close around this idea of, creative superpower, I feel like maybe your creative superpower is just curiosity. Like we were talking just before we started about like golf, and you're talking about finding this, this niche influencer. It seems like you just like you're living it.
Yeah,
And I think that like one superpower that is true, like of I know of our team and the best creative people that we've worked with, is just being willing to be
yeah,
curious about the world around us, and especially for you, like being in the brand, like living the brand, living that kind of like adventure lifestyle. I feel like is is key.
It's definitely helpful, right? It's definitely, I've worked on stuff where I wasn't necessarily directly involved in the thing that I was creating creative for, and it's great because I love creative. I love the process, I love the making, I love the doing. Everyone who's worked for me will always laugh because I will jump on someone's computer rather than try to explain something like overly. I will jump on and jump into a Premiere timeline or jump into InDesign or whatever, and actually do some stuff. And so I love the creative, but when it's around something that I'm passionate about or that I can find passion in, like it just unlocks something. It unlocks something that's like, to your point, creative, or curiosity is probably a good word for it. I get lit up by big ideas, and they don't have to be hard to execute, but just big ideas that are like, like you said, where you walk out of that meeting or that pitch, like with goosebumps, where you're like, fuck, this is going to be cool.
Yeah,
that lights me up. So I'm always looking for that. I help friends sometimes with some consulting stuff, and I'm always pushing them to do big ideas because big ideas keep people motivated, big ideas keep people fired up. And so, if anything, that's it. I'm just looking for the big ideas.
Awesome.
Love it.
Well, Casey, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to hop on with us and chat. We'll continue to follow you as you continue with bringing big ideas to life, and thrilled for you and can't wait to see what you're able to accomplish this year and beyond. But appreciate the time. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you on the other side.
Love it, guys. Thanks for the time.